for joining us. I'm really happy to help you get started using Navigator. It's really made a difference in my classroom, and I'm sure it will in yours as well. What we really want to achieve is make sure that you are able to use the Nspire Navigator System to connect your student handheld, learn a little bit about how to manage your classes, how to add students, reset passwords. I'm going to be showing you a really cool way of taking that data from your school system and using it to easily create a class. And finally, we'll make sure that you're able to stay in touch with us via social media and be informed of other upcoming events.
Okay, we're going to begin. So we assume that you have your software loaded on your computer and you're kind of up and running with your software. I typically, when I'm starting, I click to this so I can see my students in my class. But before we get started, we really want to just bring up and talk about what the Navigator system looks like. And so if you go to products on the education.ti website, you can see here we have the Navigator system. This is what it's going to look like when you get it. You'll have your software that's on your computer. You have an access point. Right now it looks like this. It may even look a little smaller in the future, is what I've been told, depending on when you get your Navigator system. And then here we have these little tiny wireless adapters. They're yellow, and they go on the top of each of your handhelds. By the way, along the way, we're going to be giving you hints and tips, and one of the things that students like to do, I don't know if you've ever had this, Ray, happen in your class, but sometimes they'll grab the handheld out of the they'll grab it by the yellow wireless adapter, and you should always hold it by your handheld there. You should never grab the yellow thing to try to pick up your handheld. It's just a common mistake that students will make. And so to get started, really the very first thing that you're going to do is start up with this, go to Tools and go to Network Manager. You really don't have to do this every single day. But to start with, you'll do this, and when the first time you do this, you're going to get this message in the middle of your screen, and it says, do you want to upgrade now? Because you probably have an old version of firmware, especially if you've had Navigator for a while, and so you'll definitely want to click to upgrade now. And when you do that, I'm going to save you the time here, but it normally takes 10 minutes for that to happen. So it's going to take about 10 minutes. And you say, are you sure you want to do that? You, of course, continue. We're showing you step by step what you'll see when you get this out of the box. And it's going to upgrade. So this bar goes back and forth across the screen for about 10 minutes. It's a lot of fun to watch. And then it'll update, and it says firmware upgrade has been completed. And so you really want to go to that point. You want to do that before you do anything else. And then once you get there, you'll have this this Navigator system here, and so you have to kind of recognize all of your wireless clients. You can see I have some of my wireless clients recognized right here, but I don't have all of them recognized. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to recognize some of my clients. And so you can manually add some clients if you know the number on each of the cradles or on the wireless adapters there. That's on the back of your cradle or on the back of your little yellow wireless adapter. It'll have a number, and you can enter them one at a time. I think that's not a very efficient way of doing it. I think most people are going to set up your network, and this is what you want to do the very first time you have your system. So when you click that, it's going to ask you some questions. It's going to say, are your handhelds all version 3.2 or later? So you want to update your handhelds before you can continue. So you want those updated to 3.2 at least. And then you have a choice here when you continue to create a network name. And so you can call it, right now it has a number for a name, and that's what's printed on the actual Navigator system. I'm going to call it McCalla for my last name, so it's going to, it'll know, that's especially good to do if there's more than one Navigator system in your school. My next door neighbor has a Navigator system. Ray, do you have any Navigator systems around you?
Oh yeah, it's I think really important to do what you're talking about here.
And so then you get to this screen, and it says operating channel, and this is kind of like your wireless network. I would recommend keeping it as whatever the default channel is initially, unless it causes a problem. So if for some reason your neighbor or your internet service at your school was was having some issues, you could always go and change the channel there. But as a general rule of thumb, I think it's the best thing to go ahead and just keep it as the default channel. So when you continue, it just takes a little bit here to kind of get your system going. And so it's going to give me a chance, it's going to start recognizing some of my hubs. And so it's configuring my system. It takes a few seconds, about 30 seconds, to configure your system for normal use. And again, this is something you have to do not very often. When you get a new Navigator system, you do this. It's possible that somewhere along the line, maybe you haven't used it in a long time, it would make you do this again, but that's not something you do every day. Very, very rarely do you have to do this. Maybe if you upgrade to a new operating system, you might have to do this again. See, I have 5 handhelds on my desk right now, and 3 of them have been recognized. And so what I can do is I can add those one at a time if I want to, or I could add them all. So if I want to, I can highlight them using the Shift key as I click on them and add all of those. And so you're going to recognize and add some of those clients as they are recognized. And when you feel like you've found all of your wireless, all of the wireless adapters and recognize all of the handhelds, I should mention this, that you really need to have a handheld for each adapter when these get recognized. So if you have a classroom set of calculators, that would be a good time to do this. Or if the students have these for the first time, you could have them have their TI-Nspire handheld in the wireless adapter. And once you're finished, you can say finish, and it will again take about 30 seconds to process this. And that means those handhelds are recognized and they're ready to be used to log in.
Hey, Jeff?
Yes.
I'm wondering, so what if I'm doing this at the same exact time that my teacher neighbor across the hall is doing it? Is it possible that I might pick up some of their handhelds?
Have you ever had that happen to you?
I have seen it. Yeah,
I have seen it
rare.
happen. So I think it's possible that that could happen. And so you might double check and make sure that you're only adding the ones that start with your numbers. By the way, typically your numbers will kind of go in a sequence of some sort. And so if you have a number that you've added that seems a little off, that might be the case there.
Okay. All right. That's a good suggestion.
I love that you added that because every once in a while some strange things like that happen.
Sure.
Would you like to save the setup configuration? If I say yes, it's just going to ask me to save this to a certain spot so that I won't have to do this process again unless the operating system is updated. And so you can always do that if you want to, but you don't have to at that point. And so really now I'm done with, I can refresh, I can make sure that it's recognizing and seeing some of the handhelds that I have here. I have about 3 of them working here. And so you can see that it gives me the battery that is left in my handheld and also the signal. The signal strength is 100%. I'm right next to my computer here. I typically don't have a big problem with signal strength in a small classroom. I guess if you had a really large classroom, it might cause some trouble, but I think it actually handles lengths pretty well. Do you ever have a problem, Ray, with not connecting signal strength, or is it usually close to 100% for you?
Yeah, it's pretty close to 100% most of the time.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and log in, and I'm going to show you what my handheld looks like after I log in. And so you can see here in the class screen that Mr. Sesto was my student teacher this year, and I had him as a student in my Navigator class. And so I'm going to, and this is some of the little tips we'll teach you also in next week's webinar. I like to go to Live Presenter. I like to right-click and go down to, that way I'm going directly to Mr. Sesto's screen. And this is what his screen looks like right now. It's just a quick way to choose a specific student and make them live presenter. So right now the calculator screen in front of me is live on the screen. If I hit the home key and then 5 and 5 for log in, this is what students have to do in order to log in. And so they'll click to Sesto, and then they'll type in the password there, and then press and tab down, tab like you would a computer down to log in. It says you are logged in as Sesto. By the way, the biggest issue we have with logging in, have you ever had this in your class where students say, I can't log in? What is usually the problem when that happens?
Yeah.
Ray, what's the problem you've had?
It's the password. They maybe don't remember the password.
Yeah, maybe don't remember the password, or sometimes it's a user error on my part. You notice I actually had begun class.
Right.
Very, very common for me is sometimes I'll just forget to start class for that particular class, and no one can log in until you start class. And so those are some issues that you face in the classroom. Also, the other thing that the handhelds have is up in the top right-hand corner, when they go to log in, they'll have one of two signals here. They'll either have, when they first start off, they'll have this kind of like a wireless bars symbol, and that means it's trying to acquire the network. It's trying to wake up and find the network and connect to that network. Once it does connect, it gets these this curly arrow, I call it, and then you're ready to log in. In fact, it won't let you log in until you get that symbol right there in the top right-hand corner of your handheld. And so typically, also, I think sometimes there's also a real common error. I don't know if you see this in your class, Ray. Sometimes students don't have either the bars or the arrow, and it's almost always the same thing. What is it in your experience, Ray, when you have that happen to students?
The same thing, and usually the students maybe have just turned it on until they have the bars, and they just need to be a little patient and wait for that curly arrow.
Yeah. And sometimes if you have the old cradle, this is not for the new yellow wireless adapters, but the cradle adapter, you had an on-off switch on the back, and many times students will forget to switch that to on. And so they won't get any arrows or any any bars or arrows. So my first question to students as I'm walking around the class, I always say, do you have bars? And I mean these wireless bars here. And then I say, do you have the arrow? And if they have the arrow, they should be able to log in. At that point, it might be a password issue. And I think Ray's going to address that when he goes over his part of that.
Yeah.
And so really, that's what you want to do. If we could pass this along to Ray now, let's see. Let me see if I can pass it.
So Jeff's been showing you his class, and what I want to do is take you through that process of actually adding the class. It's actually pretty simple, and I'm going to show you a couple of ways that can be done. So let me share my desktop with you. So here we are in the Nspire software. You might not have noticed, but there are different tabs in the teacher version. I happen to be in a document tab right now, but Jeff was operating in the class tab, and so that is really important to keep in mind. So while here in the class tab, you'll notice a number of icons at the top, and if we want to add a class, it makes pretty much sense. You see here a group of students, a little plus sign, just waiting to add a class. And so if you click on that icon, you'll notice there actually are two methods in which you can do that. We're going to go through both. We'll just start off with the manual process. You can see what that's like. And then I'll show you an automated process that makes it a lot faster. It's really a good time saver. So for manual class creation, we've got that button selected. I'll click Next. And so at this point, you want to name the classes with something that makes sense for you. For example, I happen to teach 3 different sections of chemistry, and so I might say, period 3 honors chemistry as the name of a class. I think it's better to actually put the period in the class name right there in the class name. I don't usually use this optional section. Do you use that at all, Jeff?
No, I don't use that.
Yeah. Really, it's practical just to put all the information you need right there in the class name. And so we add the class, and it's really that simple, just to create the structures for adding the class. The next part is actually adding the names, and that can be a little bit more challenging. So let me just show you how we can add another class and how easy that is. Once I'm ready, once I've finished adding all of my classes, then you click Next. and it gives you the message letting you know that your classes have been successfully created, and now the fun begins because now we have to enter the student information. And of course, you know, we have many students that we're in charge of helping in that learning process, so upwards of 140. So you could click Add Students, and you could manually add your students. Notice that, I'll just add one student here so you can see what that looks like.
How many students do you have, Ray?
Oh, I have about 140.
Yeah, so that would take a long time to manually add them, wouldn't it?
It really would, which is why this is not really the preferred process. But I do want to show you, because you never know. You might be just starting out. You might start off with one class. I think that's kind of important when you're using some new technology. Instead of jumping in with everybody, you might just want to add one class.
Or one student. Sometimes a student comes late to class, transfers in or something.
Oh, right, right. And you need to, and then this method will certainly serve that process. So we choose, obviously, the first name and the last name. The username, that's really important. The username needs to be unique. And so, good point, Travis. Travis telling us there that a student aide can enter the name, definitely. The username needs to be unique across all the students within the database within your teacher software. So you can certainly type in John for the username, but I bet you might have more than one John, or even John Smith. But stranger things have happened. So I like to choose a username that will be unique, and so what I do is I use the first two letters of the first name, the first two letters of the last name, and then I actually type in the period in which that student has been enrolled. And that, I find, helps create a unique username amongst all of 140 plus students that I have. For password choices, usually I will leave that up to the students to choose. They're more likely to remember it if they choose it themselves. And display name, you could leave that blank if you're at this part of the game, but it's nice to put in something. And, you know, who knows, maybe you want to put in a nickname for the student instead of their name from the roster. Okay, so add next student, and you could keep going with 139 more, or you could do it the faster way. So
there's got to be a quicker way.
There really is. So if I was going to keep going, I would type in some more, and then eventually I would hit finish. At this point, I'm going to hit cancel because I want to show you the other process. So usually, you will get some kind of file from your school district that gives you the names of all of your students. And so right here, I'm sharing with you an Excel file of some of the students in my honors chemistry class this year. I'm just kidding. These are obviously some popular people just to use as an example. And usually you'll get that information in either an Excel file or maybe a CSV file. And it's real simple to actually create, to work with the spreadsheet to get all those pieces of information entered into the class. So usually you get first names and last names. We're going to need to, as you might remember, create a few more columns here. For example, we're going to need to create a username. So I'm going to go ahead and type in that title. And in addition to a username, we're going to also need a class name. So those are the four fields you need in an Excel spreadsheet before you can move on. Now, the class name is the name of the class, like we had typed in earlier. Like I had told you, we had period 3, honors chemistry, and then we had period 8, honors chemistry. So what I'm going to do here is just choose maybe the first 20 or so students, and I'm going to go up to Edit and fill down the name of the class. And then I will just assign all those other students to the other section of honors chemistry. Now, when I first was doing this, I made the mistake of thinking that class name actually meant the name of the student in the class. That's not what class name is. Class name, as you can see, is something that identifies the actual class from the other classes that you teach. Well, I don't want you to make that mistake, because when I made that mistake, I found that as I imported this information into the Nspire software, I actually created about 40 different classes. I needed to delete them all, which I'll show you later on. It's actually pretty easy, but I don't want you to make that mistake. So class name, again, the name of the class that identifies which period maybe in which your students take that class. All right, on to username. So I'm going to, again, use that same format I showed you because I think it works really well. But I'm going to show you using Excel a shorthand way of doing that. So in the first box under username, I'm going to type equals, and we're going to use a command, the left command. So left, parentheses, and I'm going to basically click on the field in which I want the name to come from. So I want the username to start off with the first two letters of the first name. And so I'm going to click in that field, and then I'm going to type a comma, and then 2, because I want the first two characters, the left two characters of George's name to be in his username. And I'm going to close that off, and now I want to string that or add that on to the first two letters of his last name. So I'm going to use the ampersand key, and then I'm going to repeat that process, left, parentheses, and I'm going to say, okay, now I want to take the first two letters of the last name, so I'm going to click in that field, comma, 2, close parentheses. And because I think it's important to help make these names unique, we're going to just add a little bit more information. We're going to add the number 3 for this group.
And so every time you put a new thing, you put the ampersand sign in between to connect the two parts there.
Right. Yes, that's really important, and it's important to leave no spaces at all when you're doing this process.
Yeah.
Okay. So I am ready to fill down, so I don't have to do a lot of this work. So I'm going to highlight that part. Go to Edit, fill down, and there we go. We have some unique usernames. You'll notice there's upper and lowercase letters. That's fine. The students don't need to actually enter their username with upper and lowercase letters. They can just use all lowercase, and that's fine. What's more important is we very quickly created some usernames that are very simple. In terms of the rest of this list, I do need to make sure that these are identified a little bit differently. So if I wanted to go through that process again, I could. I could also take the formula from before and just slightly change it. This doesn't take me that long, so I'm going to go ahead and do this
It's good for us
slightly more cumbersome way.
See the magic of your Excel skills. Again.
Yeah, I'm not there we go. I am not the most proficient in Excel, but you know, anybody can do it.
Right-click there. Try right-clicking in the shaded area. Just humor me.
Yeah. Okay.
Right-click.
Yeah.
Can you fill down?
Let's see. Do I have that? And you know, on a Mac, sadly, I do not.
Oh, I'm so disappointed. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Sometimes us Mac users need to just do a little bit more work. So.
Yeah, I guess. So.
All right. So edit, fill down. Okay. So there we go. And you can do that for all of your students every school year, and it's really pretty fast. And you didn't have to enter all that information, right? You just had to do a little bit of finesse with the spreadsheet. Okay, so at this point, what's really important is that you save this spreadsheet in the correct format. Otherwise, the Nspire software can't recognize it. So that correct format, so I'm going to go up to File, Save As. And that correct format is to make sure you save it as a CSV file. And there's a couple of choices, whether you're on a Mac or Windows machine. You'll notice you'll have these choices. You want to make sure to select Windows, comma, separated as the file type. And then save it with a name and a location that you can find it. So I'm going to save it to my desktop. And you'll notice at the, yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
You said that your school counselors have all the names of your students in your school on CSV files. Is that true?
Yeah, it is, right. And so it's as simple as opening that up, adding in the username portion, and sometimes the class name, and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've created that file. Now we're going to go back here into the software, and we're going to do a little bit of importing. So now remember, we had, well, I'm going to show you this next thing. When I told you I made that mistake and I had created many different classes. There is a way to actually remove all that information. So when you're in the class tab, you can go up to the class choice at the top and select Manage Classes. What I want to do right now is actually delete those 2 courses I had just created, because with this other method, you won't need to actually add those classes one at a time. So I want to get rid of Period 3 and Period 8 Honors Chemistry. You notice you have the choice of hiding or showing, which is what we have now, or deleting. I'm going to delete those 2 files and apply those changes. And of course, you get the nice warning sign saying, hey, you're going to get rid of an entire class with all the data. You want to do this. And in this case, there's no data, so yes, it's okay.
So when would you use the Hide tab there? In what situation would you use that, Ray?
So it's possible that you use it one school year and you don't want to get rid of that student data. You still want it. You might hide all of the previous year's classes so that only the classes are showing for, for who you're actually teaching. And where those show up is in the upper right corner. You'll notice we have those class names of the ones in the current year. You might want to hide those once the school year is over, but they're still there. All that data is associated with the software. It's in the database. So that might be a reason to do that. Okay, so we're ready to add the classes. So I'm going to go back to that Add Classes icon. This time we're going to upload a CSV file. Click Next. Now we need to look for it. So I will go to my desktop. And let's see, I called it Navigator Names, so it should be here somewhere. There we go. And again, it's really important you open up the CSV file. And that's really all you'll be able to open up at this point. Click Next. Now, this is a really nice feature of the newest version of the software. Before, it was a little bit more complicated, but you're not going to have to worry about that. So you're going to need to associate some of the fields that you put in that CSV file with the official names for the Navigator software. So class name, I think class name works. Section name, remember that was optional, and so that does not need to be selected. Now, I guess the software is just that smart. We happen to use column names that match up with the fields in the Navigator software, so that's great. But really, it could have been anything, and you can associate those together. So first name's good, last name's good, username, that's good. And notice the last 2, student ID and password, those are blank. And they may be blank. That's not something that has to be done. It's just those 4 fields, the ones with the asterisks. So I click Next, and voila, they're all created. And the nice thing is, if we go to the upper right corner, we can see there's Period 3 Honors Chemistry, and there they all are. There's the students. There's a couple of really neat things that you can do once you get to the screen and you have the class set up. So you notice I'm showing this to you in kind of a seating chart view. If we go to the bottom right corner, we'll see a few icons. We're in student view right now. If I click on the one on the right, we're in list view. So it's seating chart view or list view, and I prefer the seating chart view, but this view is kind of helpful because we have all the usernames there. In seating chart view, if you need to find out a student's username, you can double click on that icon and you will automatically get that information. So it's there. It's just, yeah.
What if we just had Christmas break and about half the class has forgotten to what their password is? What do you do in your class?
Oh, yeah, right. So, well, in that case, if you want to, you can actually reset the passwords for everybody in the entire class, which is kind of nice. So you go up to the class window, you click Reset Student Passwords. It only will work, of course, for the students who are not logged in at that point. But like you said, if half the class can't log in and there's some kind of issue, you can quickly reset everybody's passwords.
But don't you have to select the students first? How do you select them?
Oh, yeah, right. And that's kind of cool, too, because I don't know if you know about this, but you can actually select them.
Yeah.
And then you can move them around, too. You can actually move them around to mirror the seating within your classroom. And so that's kind of fun. And yes, if you want to say, this group of students here doesn't have their passwords, you select them, you go to Reset Student Passwords, and it automatically takes care of those students specifically.
Gotcha.
I like to use the seating chart view actually to do some pretty kind of advanced things. Like I've created 2 different versions of a test or a quiz, and I can actually send out version A to this group of students quickly.
Oh, wow.
And send version B to that group of students. So I have them grouped that way. It really makes it easy.
That's an interesting use. What if you like to call, or what if I call, instead of saying George, I call him Mr. Clooney? What if I want to display his name differently?
So you could click on George's name and type in Mr. Clooney, and there we go.
What if I like to call them all by their last names? Is there a way to, what's that icon in the top left-hand corner there? Right there, yeah.
Right. So you can actually view the names in different ways. So we can look at their full name. We can look at their username specifically. Yeah, it's real simple to kind of change those views.
But it only shows so many letters is one thing I noticed. I'm not sure exactly how many letters, but it kind of shows ... after a while. So I usually choose, what do you choose? I choose display name usually.
Yeah, I like that one too. That one's, I think, the best. Makes the most sense. So, and then, of course, as Jeff said, what's really important, and I forgot this a few times myself, is you really do need to press begin class. And that is an important next step to get that class running. You'll notice the icons have kind of lit up, and that's kind of a nice clue to let you know as the teacher that you've started the class. When you send documents, and especially ones with questions in them, which we're going to talk to you about next time, you'll actually be able to see who has received a document. Their icon will light up either red or green based on that. Within just this window alone, you might remember from what Jeff showed you a little bit ago, Mr. Sesto actually kind of lit up once Mr. Sesto logged in. That also lets you know, and your students know for that matter, if they're logged in. It's kind of a nice feature of Navigator.
So do you ever have yourself as a participant in your class? Do you ever make an icon for you? Do you ever add, you can add an individual there, can't you? Is there a way to add
I definitely do that. And so if I wanted to add just one student, notice even while the class is running, I can do that. So I can put in my official first name, which is Mr. and Mr. Teacher, and then username, usually I'll just say teacher. And that is really helpful to do because if I wanted to, I could, again, log in as live presenter, and then I could actually do what I want. I can show the students what I want them to see. And so I think, and just to know that there's not any connection issues, I can send those same files to my own device.
So can you then, are you now tethered to the computer up at the front of the class, or can you walk around with your handheld and be directing class?
Yeah, that's a great point. That's exactly why I do it. I can walk around, I can troubleshoot, but I can help students while I'm explaining it to everybody by showing them up there at the front of the room my handheld. I can also kind of check in on students if they're having issues and help them out at the same exact time. And you're right, I'm not stuck behind a desk because of that reason.
Yeah.
Hey, Ray or Jeff.
Yeah.
Julie had a question. The question is, I only have a classroom set of Nspires. Is there anything special I need to think about when setting up the classes?
Oh, so the students don't have their own Nspires is really the point, right? It's just a class set. Really, it's as simple as setting up multiple classes on your device. I personally have just a class set at my school that's waiting at the front of the room. So when students come in and they see that, they pick up their assigned Nspire. They know to log in right away. And of course, I need to, as a teacher, remember to start that class in the upper right corner. As Jeff mentioned, I'll sometimes forget that really important point because you'll hear, I can't log in. And that usually is the issue.
And Julie, the thing that I see happen, Julie, is that sometimes, let's say Sesto logged in second period using that particular handheld. Well, then in third period, a student may come in and grab that same handheld and try to log in as their username. And so what may happen is in the username line, it may say Sesto and it'll be highlighted. And so if they just start typing, they can type their own name and it'll just kind of forget about Sesto. But it does that in case you use the same handheld every time you log in. It'll remember the last name that you used, and so they would just type their own name there, and there's really no connectivity issues or anything else as far as although sometimes, do you ever find this if you use a class set, Ray? Let's say you gave a quiz second period.
Right.
So that's one of the things, we'll actually talk about that a little bit more in detail in 2 weeks when we have our next webinar. But there's a way to actually collect that quiz, collect that file from the handheld, because if you don't collect it and actually delete it from the handheld, then it's possible that next student would have the quiz on the handheld.
Oh yeah, it's really, really easy to delete that file from the handheld, and that's a really important step.
And so we'll talk about, that's really part of our next webinar will be some of those little nuances.
Right. A nifty little feature once you're in a class, and it's going to be hard for us to demonstrate this for you because we can't quite use live presenter at the same time to show this, but you'll notice in the upper right corner it now says pause class for my screen. So if I click on that, that basically stops everybody that's logged in from doing anything. A message will pop up on their screen and basically disable their Nspire. And that's a really good way and fun way to kind of get the students' attention. Because the cool thing about Nspire is that students can work at their own pace. They're all in different places, and if you need to give some advice to them, you can do that. And then, of course, don't forget, once you're done giving them that advice, to go back up here and press resume class. There's been a few times where I forgot to do that. They said, we still can't do anything. Well, right, yeah, I have to resume the class. That's an important part. So what do you think, Jeff? Do you think everybody's ready to
there's just three icons. We don't have to go into detail, but do you see those three icons underneath review? Do you want to just tell us what kind of those do?
Sure, yeah. And we'll definitely show more of this next time, but we've got these icons here where I can send a document to the class. And a document could be anything from one question that you kind of just create, or it could be a simulation. It could be something you get from TI has actually had teachers work to develop a number of lessons via math-inspired and science-inspired. Any kind of file that you can dream of can be sent. And so we click on that and we browse for the file and send it to all the handhelds that are logged in. Once you are done and you're ready to collect those files back and you want to see, let's say maybe you sent a quiz to all the students and you want to see the results of that quiz, you click on this little next icon and that will collect that back from the class. And you will see up here a record of the files that you had sent out to the class. And so you can select one of those and pull that back. And then if you don't remember maybe to delete that from their file, you'll also see this icon here where you can delete that file from their handhelds.
So can you actually, what if all the students don't have the right OS on their handheld? Is there a way to actually update it using this?
Yeah, there's a way to actually update the operating system. Where did that go again? It's under tools. And you'll see transfer tool in which you can update that operating system for everybody. Do you have a simple way that you do that with your students, Jeff?
Yeah, well, I wasn't sure if you could do, I usually use it actually handheld to handheld, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
But I know you can do that, and I wasn't sure if you could use send to class or not to update the operating system. If you sent them the operating system, I wonder what would happen.
From what I remember the last time I did that, you need to not actually be in a class session, live in a class session.
Oh, that's why you used it.
That's why it was grayed out when I showed you that just now.
Yeah. So if you stop your class, can you stop your class and see if it's not grayed out?
Right.
So now check and see.
Yeah, see, now you have the transfer tool available.
So the transfer tool is not to be used when you're in the middle of a class. Gotcha.
Very good point. This is only used once in a great while. So I might use this to add the new operating system. I might use this if I want to totally clear up all of the files from all of the student handhelds. I could do that as well.
Like at the end of the year, you could do that, right? that
Yeah.
might be something you could consider doing, you know, so that the next class of students start fresh.
Yeah, that's certainly a lot faster than going on every handheld and manually deleting them. So.
Do you ever have memory issues with the handhelds?
Not really. No, because I can send them probably a file every day. There's a lot of space on the Nspires, and if it really starts getting a little crowded, or maybe they seem to get a little sluggish, I just ask them to maybe delete some of the files they don't need anymore, and that's not an issue.
Hey, Ray.
Yeah.
Travis had a question and a comment.
Okay.
The comment from Travis is that he feels the dock is the best batch for upgrades. And I know that I saw that thread running through the Google group recently. I know Travis was a part of that. So I think Travis uses the docking station
Okay.
to upgrade his operating system.
Right.
And then
link to his computer, right? Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then the question from Travis, he said, isn't there a default to show teacher?
In terms of, when you say teacher, what do you mean? Oh, to actually have the teacher icon there on the screen as part of the class? I don't know about that, Jeff. What about you? Have you seen that before? Have you used that before?
With the teacher icon?
The default in which the teacher shows up automatically.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
I think that was there in previous versions. I think I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's kind of up to us at this point.
Yeah, I think that was in a previous version. Actually, now that you say that.
Right. So.
And then I have another question. Someone else asked a really great question. Do you have any difficulty using a combination of the yellow wireless adapters and the cradles simultaneously?
Oh,
that's definitely a good question. Jeff, do you
They
have
both work.
or?
They both work seamlessly. I think the only thing is if there's a problem with one, like the instructions aren't the same. You know, so someone with a cradle usually forgets to turn them on, and someone with the yellow wireless adapter, typically they may have to jiggle it if it's just not fitting quite right.
Right.
They may have to make sure that it fits all the way snug in there. So it's just two different usually instructions, because with the cradle, it's usually fit in there pretty snug. It's just a matter of you've turned it on or not.
Right.
I will say this about the difference, in case you're wondering. So the yellow wireless adapters only work with the new color CX handhelds.
Right.
So it only works with that type, whereas the cradles work with all types of Nspires. And the other thing about the cradle, which is kind of interesting, is they don't drain the handheld's batteries. And so they actually they power your handheld. You could theoretically, in fact, I think I've had it happen, have a handheld that is dead. The batteries are you know, all the juice is gone. And if you have them in a cradle, it should still work with Navigator.
Right, because you're recharging that cradle overnight, not the batteries.
Right, the cradle is actually powering your handheld, whereas the wireless adapters are for use with the lithium battery that's in your CX handheld, which is much more powerful, and so we don't have as many issues with the losing battery power because they stay charged quite a bit longer.
The other thing with the Nspire CX is if there really is a connection issue, I mean, every once in a while something will happen. You might see a connection error. Usually what you ask students to do, like Jeff said, is you make sure that yellow adapter at the top is seated snugly in the Nspire. But if that doesn't work, if maybe it isn't in there snug, and you push it in to make sure, you can press the reset button on the back. You basically just take a pen or pencil point and poke it for a half second or so, and it'll restart the Nspire CX. With the older versions of the Nspire with the cradle as the adapter, you'll have to take that cradle off, put it back on, and turn it to the on position, and that will reset the Nspire. Like Jeff said, there's different ways of resetting them. If there's
you're talking about when the handheld freezes occasionally. Yeah,
right.
Sometimes I'll just take out a battery on the older Nspire, whereas you're right, the reset works really well on the CX. So I think we've hit a lot of troubleshooting issues in this first WebEx here. And And as you can see, if you've watched some of the other Navigator WebExes, this has been a very, very practical, very, you've just got your, got it out of the box and getting ready to